It's dawn at a Southampton marina, and one of the wackiest races ever staged in Britain has just started. 8 tractors with bags of Jersey Royal potatoes on board are on their way to Birmingham. On the way, they will give spuds to hospitals and the public at large. The money raised during the event will go to help a more serious race, finding a cure for the muscle-wasting disease muscular dystrophy. Potatoes are a way of life for many people in the Channel Island of Jersey, and before the days of tourism and the finance industry, the majority of islanders were involved in agriculture. Many advances have been made since the old days, but the majority of the island's potato crop is still planted by hand. And much of the work is done by an ever-growing Portuguese community who were drafted in during the 1960s when the availability of casual French labour dried up. But the days when everything had to be done by hand are long gone. A variety of machines have been devised for various purposes. This one prepares the soil and ensures it's in perfect condition for planting. An insecticide is distributed onto the ground before a tractor makes the rows into which the seed potatoes are placed. Planting usually takes place in February, when it's still often bitterly cold. The seed potatoes are stored in heated sheds during the winter, and there is always the risk that a late spell of bad weather could ruin the seed potatoes when they're in the ground. The covering of the lines of potatoes has also been mechanised. This quaint little machine is so small to prevent the seed potatoes being packed too tightly. On some of the larger farms, the very latest technology has started to appear. This is a multi-purpose machine which makes the rows, allowing 6 lines to be planted simultaneously, and then it covers them up again. Machines like this cut down on the need for hired labour and will normally improve profits. But not everyone can afford them, and there is always the danger that the smallholder will be forced out of business because he cannot compete. Soon after planting is finished, Jersey becomes a sea of plastic. More than 1/6 of the island is covered to help bring the crop on. The earliest potatoes sell for up to £1.50 a pound, and plastic is thus vital to the success of the industry.
The benefits of the Jersey grower using plastic are essentially to keep his position in the marketplace. Since the advent of field covering of plastic, growers in Cornwall, Pembroke and Lincolnshire and in Brittany and France have used increasing amounts of the material, and therefore we have to do the same to keep our position in the marketplace. The soil temperatures increase fairly dramatically, plus the soil remains in a better condition during the early stages of growth because heavy rain, etc., doesn't pound the soil. These are basically the physical advantages at this point in time.
The drawback with plastic is the expense, but a new machine has been invented to help farmers reuse the plastic sheets. A simple machine like this winds the sheets back onto the original holder, minimising damage and storage space. It also makes it easy to relay the following spring. The sheets can only be used twice, but this clever invention can save even a smallholder several £1000s a year. The Jersey Royal is perfectly suited to the island. The major drawback is its susceptibility to blight, a virulent disease which rots the potatoes and is highly contagious. Spraying and careful control when cases are discovered has kept blight down to little more than a minor irritation in recent years. But in some years, blight has been so widespread that much of the crop, good and bad, has had to be dumped.
The Jersey potato crop is a complete disaster. Every farmer that I've spoken to today that's come up to the Moormaddow tip has the same story to tell. Riddled with blight, the potatoes are rotting in the barrels, the English markets are glutted, they're just not worth sorting to send to market. The situation is serious and really serious. This is probably the worst season the Jersey early potato grower has known since the war.
Jersey farmers hope that dispiriting scenes like this will never be repeated. And in the 60s it was all the more heartbreaking because much more of the lifting and picking was done by hand. It was backbreaking, labour-intensive work, and it was made all the more difficult because of the lack of available French farm workers. In one season, the industry wanted 1,800 seasonal workers, but could only raise 1,100. There were some machines available, but the shortage of staff ensured that the question of labour-saving devices was addressed with renewed fervour. A number of advances in efficiency have been made, but for many farmers it is still only cost-effective to use the old labour-intensive system. The lifting machine has been updated to minimise damage. It is vitally important that the potatoes are not damaged as they are lifted, as any marking can reduce the retail value. Although the majority of seasonal staff are now Portuguese, the workers on this farm are all French.
My particular gang come from France, from the north corner of Brittany, around Tréguier, Paimpol. We've had the same sort of gang from the same village for about 20 years. Obviously not the same people, because the originals are all men now, retired. But we've been very fortunate we've managed to carry on with French people. Obviously when you look around there's a lot more Portuguese, and Portuguese have taken over the job of the potatoes.
The picked potatoes are then loaded onto a tractor for delivery to one of the two main packing sheds. The alternative for the farmer with a larger acreage to cover is this monster, which does away with the need for the potatoes to be hand-picked from the ground. Specially designed blades dig the spuds up. They are then lifted up into a cage where they're separated from the earth and foliage. On board, 3 sorters look over the potatoes to ensure that no substandard ones get through. They then pass over a rack and the smaller ones fall through into a basket underneath. A packer stands at the end of the production line, placing bags in position and then sealing them when they're full. It's all a mammoth step forward from lifting the potatoes by using a fork, shaking them loose and then gathering them by hand. But for the majority of farmers, the next step comes here, at the packing shed, where the potatoes are emptied onto yet another conveyor belt for further sorting. The final stage involves packing in high-quality sacks for export to the UK markets. The whole process, allowing for good weather, should be straightforward, with good profits available to all. But it's not always that simple. A major debate began when Jersey farmer Doug Richardson ignored the agricultural authorities. To prevent the market being flooded with Jersey potatoes, stop digging orders are issued when specified amounts have been packed ready for export. Farmer Doug Richardson just carried on digging, claiming that he had a private contract to fulfill. He told the investigators that he would breach his contract if he did not continue lifting potatoes through the stop digging period. He was subsequently taken to court and fined. Farmers like Mr. Richardson claim they will be pushed out of business because they cannot lift potatoes as fast as those who farm large acreages with the latest equipment. With stop digging orders being announced when an island-wide quota is reached, they say they'll never be able to compete. So, should farmers like Richardson be allowed to dig when they want?
No, because he has an effect on the total operation. If any individual farmer who can ship out at times when nobody else can has got an intrinsic advantage. And there's a lot of nonsense about people finding their own contracts. All he did was find another agent different from the two existing local groups and used him to market his potatoes. There's nothing very clever about that. Dozens of them would do it for you in the UK.
Whichever farm they come from, the potatoes are shipped to the UK, where they're one of the most popular new potatoes on the market. As the first early potatoes are on their way to market, at Jersey Airport, competitors in the Great Potato Race are preparing to fly to Southampton.
You'll just pull the tickets. There's your boarding pass.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In Britain, the sacked potatoes are distributed to agricultural produce warehouses. Speed is of the essence in getting the product to market because the price can drop literally day by day.
Jersey Royal has a prominent share of the English market. It would be classed as the #1 on the favourite list of potatoes, new potatoes of an English family. Faces competition early on in the season from Egypt, from Spain, then comes the mainland Cornish and on into other areas of English new potatoes.
And how does the Jersey potato stand up to that competition?
It would still be classed as is the #1 leader.
Ultimately, though, the test is in the eating. Why are some people prepared to pay more than £1 for Jersey Earlies when Egyptian and other brands are in the market at around 20 pence a pound?
You can never get enough of them. I mean, they're the #1 potato, aren't they? That's it. I mean, they sell themselves.
I normally buy the red potatoes, actually.
Is that because they're cheaper or because you prefer them?
I prefer them.
Because we don't eat a lot of potatoes. But when the new potatoes come in and the old potatoes are going to get really old, you know.
So you would buy Jersey in preference to Egyptian or Spanish?
Oh yes, I wouldn't buy any of those.
People just prefer English now, though.
What do you prefer?
I don't care. Potato's a potato to me.
Nearby at Southampton Airport, the potato racers arrived to do battle. The race was primarily designed to help launch the Jersey Royal crop, but the competitors were also raising funds for research into muscular dystrophy. As they arrived, they knew that their efforts in a fun event could help inch research a little closer to a cure for this debilitating muscle-wasting disease. The severest form, Duchenne's, affects young boys. They eventually lose all movement and rarely survive their late teens or early 20s. The Ocean Village Marina was the site selected for the start of the race. The competitors were ferried there the night before to familiarise themselves with the new tractors they would be racing in. There was no need to teach the competitors how to use the tractors, as the rules state that each team must have 2 experienced drivers.
Yeah, look, it drives itself. I even read the paper.
Then it was time to head off to a hotel for a full briefing on the separate routes each team would be following. Just after dawn, the teams loaded up the sacks of spuds that would be delivered to a number of major and minor hospitals en route. They were also given small boxes of potatoes and aprons to hand out to the public along the way. Actor Tony Anholt from the series Howard's Way then put the racers under starters' orders.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The finishing line was at the Patrick Collection Motor Museum on the outskirts of Birmingham. The Barclays Bank team arrived at 12:30, 6.5 hours after leaving Ocean Village Marina. They were followed half an hour later by H&H Growers and the Jersey Farmers Union. The race was praised by everyone as a great success. So how did it all go for the triumphant winners?
Very well indeed.
How did you prepare for the race?
A lot of hard work the night before, basically due to Cindy and her map work. And that's about it, really.
What kind of map work was that, Cindy?
Nothing special. I think we were very fortunate in that we missed a lot of the traffic. We had to deliver our potatoes to the hospital in Winchester very early, and consequently managed to get in, get out, and basically get on up here.
Broadcaster Ed Doolin presented Barclays with an engraved vase to mark their achievement.
Congratulations, 6 hours and 31 minutes from Southampton to Birmingham. Well done, congratulations, tremendous.
It was a
Well
fun
done
day
all.
for all involved, but several £1,000s was also raised to help prevent the suffering of young people like Ariane Trigg. She has muscular dystrophy, and the money raised will fund research in an attempt to find a cure for this disease. Ariane spends much of her time at Montalabé School in Jersey. Although her movements are severely restricted by the disease, she takes part in most school activities. Ariane is a happy individual with a love of life that is a lesson to us all, as her mother testifies.
Ariane has coped in a remarkable way. She gets on with life. Being very much a little individual, she just takes each day as it comes. Every little problem is faced and chatted about, and we go on from there. At home, I would say her biggest enjoyment is her videos, her musical videos, jigsaw puzzles. She loves going out, meeting people. A trip to town shopping is a major excursion. Things that young girls like, makeup and clothes to a certain degree. As an individual, she has an incredible sense of patience, my husband actually says he feels humbled because of her. Because of her general outgoing character, she tends to make people forget that she has this handicap. And I think that's the best thing possible, both for her and for us, is to make her life an everyday, normal as possible, routine, discipline, everything that a young teenager needs. One makes allowances, but I think Ariane is, well, they are special children. There's no other way you can put it. They are special children. But we don't say that when she's around.
Ariane's positive outlook on life was rewarded a few years ago when she was voted Guide of the Year. She's at her best in the swimming pool. She has regular physiotherapy sessions, but even in the pool where her body is supported and cushioned, every movement requires grit and quiet determination. The cruelest form of the disease is Duchenne's, which only affects boys. Paul Huxtable died after years of suffering, but he left behind a legacy of love. It's hard to believe that this proud, healthy-looking young boy, seen here with his sisters, could be reduced to a physical wreck by the age of 15. But it happened. A short life, but one full of courage.
One day he came home from going to a youth club. He used to have to go in a wheelchair. And we were in the kitchen having a coffee before he went to bed, and he just broke down in a flood of tears and said, "Please, Mummy, I don't want to stop walking. Please take me somewhere so that I'll be able to carry on walking." And I had to try and explain to him, but he was very young, that muscular dystrophy was a dreadful disease and he was going to stop walking, but we were going to pull together and we were going to fight it and not give in to it. He coped very well. He was exceedingly brave. When he was 14, he was really practically totally useless. He had just a little movement in his fingers. He couldn't sit up unaided. He had to have special aids in order for him to hold his head up because his head used to flop. I'd actually just at one time just come home from a meeting in London to do with research, and I always used to enthuse and say, golly, they're really getting quite close to a cure and we'll be all right, you and I. And he very quietly said, I'm so pleased, Mum, for the other children. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, it's too late for me. And he then really realised that it was much too late for him and that he was sadly going to die quite soon. Paul had to sadly take to his bed 13 months before he died. We didn't realise it was going to be that long. The doctors thought it was going to be a matter of weeks. And he very often used to talk to me. Basically, it was only me. He didn't really mention it to anyone else, but he wanted to know what sort of notice I was going to put in the paper. He chose the songs that he wanted played at his funeral. He didn't want any hymns. He didn't want people to be morbid. Paul is still a very big part of our lives. He wanted to be. No, I can't say that I've come to terms with it. I still miss him dreadfully.
There's 3 or 4 medals hanging up in the sitting room. Where are they from?
Well, Paul used to always try and encourage me to sort of get out and about. I mean, I was really stuck here 24 hours a day with him, but he said, why didn't I take up running? Because I've always liked athletics on the television. And I said, yes, well, I will. I said, but how can I? I've got to be here all the time looking after you. Yes, he said, well, when I've died, how about doing the marathon? I thought, wow. So I said, yes, all right, I will. So just a short while after Paul died, I joined the local athletics club and I trained for a year and did the London Marathon a couple of weeks ago.
And that was to raise money for?
That was in memory of my very brave son, yes, to raise money for muscular dystrophy research.
Paul passed his O-levels shortly before he died. He was also a good artist until he lost control of his hands. Paul loved aeroplanes, as Ariane does, but sadly he never flew. Ariane, though, was able to pilot her own Flower Power Special at Jersey's big festival, the Battle of Flowers. Many hours' work go into preparing each entry. Ariane's plane, which was built on the framework of her wheelchair, won the Carnival class. Her happy, smiling face is testimony to the simple fact that where there's life, there can be joy and happiness.